Alright, now that I have your attention, let's get down to business. First and foremost, my name is Andy Karmun. I graduated from Mount Edgecombe High School as a 4-year senior in 2014, and it seems like just yesterday I was at Edge Camp myself. Mrs. Brady-Howard has kindly asked me to create a video that can teach students about the history of Mount Edgecombe, so that's what I'm going to do. Mount Edgecombe High School began as a military base during World War II, complete with barracks and 2 large hangars. After the war, the Bureau of Indian Affairs turned the abandoned military base into a high school. Students from the failing Wrangell and Eklutna boarding schools were the first students to attend the new school. Gil Truitt was one of those first students.
I arrived at Mount Edgecombe February 22nd, 1947, from Wrangell Institute. There were 2 boarding schools that needed help. One was Eklutna outside of Anchorage. It had become so deteriorated and run down that people in the BIA office in Juneau knew they had to do something. So they took those students from Eklutna and sent them to old Army barracks in Seward. Wrangell Institute, where I was too crowded.
The first students to attend Mount Edgecombe were from Eklutna and Wrangell, but as soon as word got out about this new boarding school in Sitka, kids from virtually every village in Alaska began attending Mount Edgecombe. Within a relatively short amount of time, Edgecombe established itself as the go-to school for students in Alaska who did not have ready access to a high school education. And in a rapidly changing world, it was becoming more and more clear that everybody needed an education to support themselves, both in the cities and in the villages.
Mount Edgecombe exposes all of you folks to what's out of the village. And I think it opens the eyes of a lot of young people who come to school here. And I think that motivates a lot of the young people who attend Edgecombe. But it's very important that when they leave here, that they have the basics down real well. Basics in education. And that's one of the reasons I've never pushed for Native Studies, because we've got to teach the students the basics and get them ready for the job market.
While Mount Edgecombe doesn't exactly push for Alaska Native Studies, that doesn't necessarily mean that traditional customs are vacant here. On the contrary, they are promoted and valued, with many distinct Native dance groups, games, and foods.
On special occasions, students from the various regions of Alaska can share with each other the unique dishes from home.
Have you tasted these before?
Yeah, I did.
What are they?
Fish eggs.
Have you tasted the soap berries?
I never did.
Unfortunately, in the early 1980s, Mount Edgecombe faced a serious roadblock.
We had an investigator from the BIA come through here. He spent some time visiting with us. Then he wrote a report. It was his recommendation that the school be shut down. It was scheduled to close in 1982. When we heard the school was going to be closed, the student body president, Donna Cayuse, she lives in Barrow now, organized students to write letters. Mrs. Sutton, who lives here, also helped organize it. And they wrote hundreds and hundreds of letters to anybody they thought could help. So hearings were held all over Alaska, and most of the people testified were against Mount Edgecombe reopening. And alumni came out and testified in favor of it. And I went to all of these meetings and testified, held all over Alaska. And then the legislature and the State Board of Education decided to reopen the school.
With Edgecombe now a fully functioning school, it's up to the students to decide whether or not it will remain successful. And it's the school's responsibility to ensure that all of its students become properly educated and disciplined.
If we have rules and regulations, they need to be enforced, because it's a part of the education, just like when you have your own family. Raising your kids properly with rules and discipline at home, that's what this school should be doing.
Although Mount Edgecombe has gone through many changes since it was opened in 1947, The feelings of pride and family that its students and staff share hasn't changed at all.
You become a part of the Edgecombe family. You take pride in the school, you like the school, and you get along with each other. And you don't notice it too much while you're here, but you go to the AFN, you go to the state tournaments, you see that. You see the family spirit, the Edgecombe pride. When our girls played for the state championship, that whole one side of the Sullivan Arena was Mount Edgecombe.